This is the Silicon Prairie, where we get 30,000 calls a day here at Gateway 2000. How come?
Because it was the best value.
I got my money's worth.
We built the computer that I needed.
I needed a high-performance machine, and that's what I got.
And they were great. I felt comfortable right away.
Great big boxes look like a cow.
I got a fork!
Gateway computers feature the Intel Pentium processor. To find out more, call 1-800-GATEWAY. Isn't it time you called?
Hey there, and welcome to this video. You probably guessed it. It's about a Gateway 2000 machine. Gateway to paradise, because paradise is excellent DOS gaming, which is exactly what this machine should give us. So this is a Socket 5 Pentium machine, a Gateway 2000 P5 100, so I guess it was a 100 megahertz. There is actually no CPU in this machine. The guy on eBay said there was no CPU, but the last time it was on, it worked, so I took his word for it. Nobody else seemed to bid for it, probably because of that, but I got it for £50, which I thought was a bit of a bargain because the price of Socket 5 seems to be getting ever higher these days, and they seem to be quite scarce as well. I love Socket 5 mostly because I really want a Socket 4, one of the 60-66 megahertz first gen Pentiums. I'd love one of those. I've never seen one for sale anywhere, so my chances of getting one are pretty slim. Closest I can get is a Socket 5 machine for the second gen, so I've got a real kind of soft spot for these. They kind of remind me of all of the excitement I remember when the Pentiums first came out and looking in the magazines at the 60s and 66s and thinking how amazing it all sounded, but not being able to afford one until many years later. The front bezel plastics were snapped where the clips are, so I've used some epoxy putty, which seems to be pretty tough stuff. So hopefully once I get this thing clipped on again, it'll stay put. It seems pretty stable. So yeah, the sticker on the front of this is peeling off. I've just put some double-sided tape on that to stick it back down. It's got a 52-speed LG CD-ROM drive in it, and there's also a chunk taken out of one of the drive bay covers. Not sure if I like the CD-ROM or not. We might have to see if we can replace it with something a bit more, sort of something without writing on it that matches the rest of the case a bit better. The Gateway and Pentium logos are down on this funny panel thing at the bottom left, which just seems to be held on by, well, just kind of wedged in basically. There's no clips or anything. I've never seen a case like this for Gateway before. I'm used to seeing cases like this, which is the same as my 486, but yeah, this kind of model's a new one on me, so I don't know what the difference is or why it's different to those other desktop cases. Flipping it round, you can see there's some kind of I/O panel missing there, probably some proprietary plate type thing around the PS2 connectors for the mouse and keyboard. And then we've got a power supply, doesn't look particularly exciting. We've got some cards, it's always fun to have cards. So we've got a graphics card, a sound card, and some I/O. So cool, I'll be interested to see what they are. Got a little bit of information on the back, which is always nice. So we can, it's nice when you actually see when the thing was made. So 17th of the 6th, 1996. Nice and specific. It's got a model number of BAT-C. I think my 486, my Gateway 486 is a BAT something as well, so yeah, but it's nice when you got a bit of detail like this. Okay, time to get the lid off and take a look inside. It has to be said, like a bit like the other case that I had, these cases are built to last. They are heavy. If you drop this on your foot, you'd certainly know about it. Here we are inside the beast. We've got some RAM, which is always nice. You can see the CPU's missing, but we already knew that. Got some cards. They don't look like the original ones, but we'll sort that out. I want to try and make this machine as original as possible if I can. And now we can get the cards out. So now that I'm in here looking at it, I do remember that the original listing on eBay also said that the floppy controller on the motherboard doesn't work, which is why there is an I/O card in here to begin with. So the CD and the hard drive are plugged into the IDE ports on the motherboard, but the floppy runs into this I/O card. But we'll have a look at that and see exactly what's going on and see if we can fix it if we can. So you can see we've got a graphics card from S3, which is cool. I think from what I've read, I did have a look to try and find out what the original spec of this machine was. I'm guessing that this was the original graphics card that came with it. Early Pentiums still using 80 power supplies. This one doesn't seem to want to come out, but yeah, so it's early stuff in the world of Pentiums. Looks pretty clean inside. There's dust everywhere, but nothing major. So I'm going to take everything out, give it all a bit of a wipe and get rid of any cack that might be sort of lurking beneath the board, and then we can put it all back together and see if it works. The hard drive's in a caddy that screws in from the front, so already my newly glued bezel's getting a bit of a stress test because I had to take it off again to be able to take the hard drive caddy off. Seems to be holding up pretty well, I'm pleased to say. Drive cage out the way and the motherboard came out, and yeah, it looks pretty clean under there, so not really much to do apart from give it a wipe. And then that just leaves the drives to come out, so I think this cage does come out, but I'm not going to take it out. I'm just going to take the drives out, have a look at what they are. I think I will take the power supply out because there's some pretty nasty cack in the fan that I can see through the grill at the back, so I'm going to open up and just give the insides of the PSU a dusting as well. There's an enclosure to put a case fan, and I did think about it, but when I tried to get it off I realised that all of the plastics on this machine are extremely brittle, and I broke one of the tabs, so I'm not going to risk anything else with any of the plastics on this machine. And yeah, there is quite a lot of dust in this machine, so I'm going to take it away and give it a good wipe down. So yeah, we saw this before, that these things are quite stiff to get off, and it looks like somebody's stuck a knife or a screwdriver in the edge and taken a chunk out of the drive bay cover, which is a bit of a shame. You know, they've broken all the tabs and everything. The bottom one is okay, but I'm going to have to get another type to put in there. So what I'll probably do is remove the bottom one as well, and then just put two matching ones in to replace them. Take a closer look at the things that we took out. So the floppy disk drive, it's got a gateway sticker on it, so that's going to be the original floppy, which is cool, from Epson. I don't think I've got any drives made by Epson. So I've got printers made by Epson, but no drives, so yep, cool, it's still working. I'll go back in. Two mismatched sticks of memory, so I guess not the original stuff from the machine. Looks like FPM as well, not EDO. I would have thought it would be EDO that would have come with it. Maybe not. PSU's out now, so this is, I think it's a 200 watt from Delta Electronics. Don't know if that's a good make or not. I think I've got some other ones by them. It rings a bell, but yeah, I guess this is the original PSU as well. The optical drive is almost certainly not the one that came with the machine, especially since it's a 2003 model, 52 speed. I think I found the P5100 advertised in a magazine, and I'm pretty sure it said that the original drive was an 8-speed CD-ROM drive, so I might have a mooch around in my CD-ROM drive collection and see if I can find something a bit more appropriate. And here's the motherboard, looking a bit dusty. Dust on the chips, the battery looks a little bit kind of blotchy and corroded on the top, so we'll put a new coin cell in there. Just going to give it a very quick brush to get most of the surface dust off. The capacitors look okay, not that there's very many of them to be seen. And then we'll take a closer look at the bits and pieces that are on it. So here's our socket 3. It's a single voltage 3.3, I think, was the recommended voltage for the Pentium and the Pentium Overdrive, for which it was designed, but I also believe single voltage chips like the AMD K5, which I think runs at about 3.5 volts, would work happily here too. We've got dip switches for setting our bits and pieces. Bus speeds supported are 50, 60 and 66 megahertz. For our expansion, we've got 3 ISA slots and 4 PCI slots. So this board is PS2 only for mouse and keyboard, as is my Gateway 486, which is perhaps a bit ahead of its time in that respect. My other socket 5 motherboard has an AT keyboard socket still and a serial mouse. We've got an AT power supply connector, and then there's that other auxiliary power supply connector, which I think was just to bolster the PCI bus, though I've never tried it and don't really know under what circumstances you would use it. And this chip here, I reckon, is the I/O controller that is potentially not working properly for the floppy drive, but we'll find out shortly. Then we've got 4 72-pin RAM slots. We've got the floppy connector there that's supposed to not work. And then we've got 2 IDE channels, so we can have the CD drive and the hard drive on separate ones. And then we've got our chipset, which is the venerable Intel 430 FX Triton, which you see on a lot of these early Pentium motherboards. And yeah, had its strengths and weaknesses. It was the first to support EDO RAM, and failed in the cache department because though you could have up to 128 megabytes of RAM, it only cached the first 64 megabytes for some reason. Hard drives from Fujitsu. I seem to have a lot of these. They come out of a lot of machines from this time period. I think this particular one's a 3.2 gig one, so probably the original hard drive, and that will be going back into the machine. On to take a look at the cards. So the first one we've got here is a sound card, not the card that came with the machine. I wouldn't have thought. This is a Windows card, one of those Ensoniq based creative cards. It needs drivers. Somebody scrawled over the back of it, but yeah, I don't think I'll be putting this back in. It's really a much later card, and I would say that this machine is probably better off for DOS games and things like that. Next up, we've got the I/O card that the floppy disk was running off, WinBond chipset, so we'll have to see if we need this or not in a little bit. So the graphics card is a Diamond Stealth 64. So it's based on the S3 Vision 864 chipset. So I guess it's going to be good compatible DOS card. Only 1 meg of RAM, room for another meg on there, but don't know if I'll be able to find some. But I'll see if I can. I'm pretty sure that you see it kicking around on eBay quite a lot these days. But yeah, I guess it's all that really remains now is to put it back together and see if it works. So we've got the motherboard back in with the new battery. Get the other bits and pieces put back in, and yes, recently arrived from eBay, a new shiny Pentium 100. So this is the chip I think that would have originally come in the machine. It runs at 60 or 50 megahertz bus. I'm not quite sure what this is set at. I just left it as it is. We're pretty much back together. I've hooked the floppy drive up to the controller on the motherboard, so we're going to try it without the card and see how far we get. So the big question is, will it post? And yes, it does. Yay! Straight into the BIOS to do the usual. They've got a new battery, so we can set the date and time. I did notice on the memory it was saying that it could only see 1 SIM on bank 0. So I did notice it was only showing 8 megabytes on Bootup. I guess those 2 SIMs should have given me 16. It's only reading the first one, so I'll find 2 other matching pairs and put that right. So it continued to boot into Windows 98, surprisingly. So I don't think this is really a Windows 98 machine. And then it wanted to do a scan disk, and then it blue screen of death. So there's clearly something wrong with the setup. But because the Socket 5 machines first made an appearance in 1994, a while before Windows 95 came out, thanks to archive.org, I've got some gateway system disks from 1994 for DOS and Windows 3.1. A bit more Googling revealed that this disk does not include DOS 6.22, which is what it would have relied on. I don't know whether that came on separate disks when you bought your gateway machine or whatever, but either way I had to do an install of DOS 6.22. So everything was set up on DOS 6.22, and we've got our CD all loaded and working. Now we can browse the gateway CD, and the first thing that we need to load off there is Windows 3 or 3.1, I think it is, or 3.11 it might even be. It's on a CD. I've never loaded Windows 3 off a CD before, so that's fun. And now that I've got, so once Windows 3 is loaded, everything kind of becomes easier because we can see what's going on instead of just looking at DOS prompts all the time. And then we can have a proper browse of the CD and see there's a whole bunch of stuff on there, most notably something from Corel, so some kind of graphics program that looks like some diagnostic stuff, some sound samples, some sound card drivers. So while I was clicking through all that software, there was a thing called the Corel Guide, and I tried it and it moaned because I didn't have a sound card installed. So I thought now is a good time to get out one of the Vibras, which is this one here. We're going to stick it in and load the drivers off the gateway setup disk and see if we can get some sound. So using the gateway disks, the sound install was pretty straightforward, and now we've got all of our icons in Windows, and we should be able to play some tunes from the examples that are on the CD. So let's see what they sound like. nice music to listen to chill you out while you're doing your office work. So I'm quite pleased that I've got a vibrator in there, which is what would have been in there originally. So I think really the only thing that isn't correct now with this machine is the CD-ROM drive. I don't think I'll ever probably be able to replace it with the correct one, but this machine's pretty much back to the way it would have been when it came in for the first time. So let's go and have a look at that coral thing that was asking for sound in the first place and see what that was all about.
Hello, and welcome to the CorelDRAW Quick Tour. I'm Susan Wimmer, and I'll be popping up every now and then to assist you as you work through the Quick Tour elements. First, I'd like to introduce you to the screen. Up here in the upper right, you're going to see the switcher button, and that's the way that you switch between the workbook.
Hey, so how cool is that? Super early FMV video teaching you how to use your Coral Paint program.
Those are going to be VCR-like controls for play, pause, stop, and rewind. There's something for everybody in the Quick Tour, from beginners to people who have worked with CorelDRAW for years. So let's get started. Just click the switcher button and I'll meet you down in the work.
So there's a bunch of other stuff on the CD, a lot of diagnostics stuff and fairly uninteresting things. So really we need to get back to the box and put it all back together and see if we can do anything about those drive bay covers. So the bezel has to go back on, because it had to come off to get the drive bay caddy out for the hard drive. Take a look at that, and I'm pleased to say that epoxy putty stuff seems to be really holding up. I mean, this thing's taken quite a battering getting itself back on, but they seem to be holding up perfectly well. And for the drive bay cover, I've got a big box of these and found a couple that kind of look the part, but obviously the catches that lock them in place aren't quite right. So I think what I'll probably do is I'll take the bottom one out and put two in that are the same from my collection, and then maybe just pop a little bit of hot glue on the inside just to hold them in place. And there it is, the finished machine. So looks pretty nice. I've got a Gateway mouse and a Gateway keyboard that are from a much later model, so they've got a Windows 95 key and it's an Intelli mouse, but they're all badged the same, so it looks pretty cool. Those I/O panels are looking quite sweet. I actually had to go back to the original 52-speed CD-ROM drive because my two alternatives, neither of them worked. So this one's a pretty nippy drive. We're loading Civilization 2 because it's an interesting one. It's actually a Windows game. It only works on Windows, either Windows 95 or Windows 3.11. I'm not even sure if this isn't the only game I've got that needs Windows 3.11 in a DOS environment. But yep, interesting to try it out, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, this is a nice looking box. I'm pleased I've got it. Another kind of early Pentium, and yeah, it looks nice, very nice. I moved it over onto my work desk as well. It's not often I actually film things over here because this is the desk I work at when I'm working from home. So it's nice to be doing something entertaining over here, come to think about it. I might do some more filming and stuff over here because it keeps the other side of the room clear when I want to play games and stuff. But yeah, I love this machine. I think it looks, I mean, it's like a brick. Look at it. It's just huge and it's so solid, and yeah, it's just a shame the plastics were a bit fragile, but the rest of it is built like a tank, built to last. And I'm really pleased I've got another Socket 5 machine in my collection. And Gateway are nice. I've got nice memories about Gateway. My parents had a Gateway in the late 90s, and I remember the big cowhide boxes arriving and stuff. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to play some Civilization 2 on this now. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you'll join me for the next one. Not quite sure what that's going to be yet. But in the meantime, thank you for watching and goodbye.